Tomorrow comes a day too soon, never dies, creeps in this petty pace from day to day, is another day, and is only a day away. There's always tomorrow. Welcome to Vaguely Scientific. I am Derek, and I am currently troubleshooting our transchronal radio, so Jim should be here. Jim, can you hear me?
Probably yes.
Probably yes. That's wonderful. I have traveled back in time to mid-November in the year 1966, and I am currently somewhere in the woods outside of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, looking for our guests this week. And I might see them up at... Yeah, here they are. Aly and Justin.
Oh, hey. Hey, Derek.
How's it going?
Dude. You won't believe what we've been through.
We just saw some wild stuff, man.
Well, I know you're doing some very important cryptozoological research, but... it is time for the show where we answer the most ridiculous audience-submitted questions in a manner that we like to call vaguely scientific. Before we get to that, it's time for the fun science fact of the day, so back to you, Jim.
Hooray! I like this one. I don't know. I like all of them. I say that every time. Science is cool. Anyway, quarks are the subatomic particles that combine to make up protons and neutrons. Now, there are 6 flavors of quarks. There are the up, down, top, bottom, charm, and strange quarks. However, all protons and neutrons are made up only of up and down quarks. All the other flavors are very unstable and break down really fast.
I am not convinced you didn't just make this up.
I wish I did.
It sounds like one of those tag yourself memes. Like, tag yourself, are you a top quark or a strange quark?
Charm and strange are... Why
Yeah.
those?
I don't know. Those are my favorite. Apparently they're useless. I don't remember what this pertains to, but there's a field of study called quantum chromodynamics, and I just like the word. I don't know what it's about. I probably would never understand it if someone told me, but quantum chromodynamics, that's just a great name for a field of study.
I'm going to just assume it has something to do with color.
I think it might be pretend color, like how these are called flavors of quarks, even though you can't taste them.
Imaginary color.
So yeah. This is just prestidigitation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Gary Gygax was right, and he didn't even know it.
Well, speaking of people who were right, I think we should move on to a segment we haven't done in a while called Stuff We Got Wrong and Actually Bothered to Look Up Later. In episode 99, we wouldn't eat Treebeard, which at this point was like 1 million years ago. Mm-hmm. I said that animals don't want to eat the bark and the hardwood parts of trees. But beavers actually do eat the bark of some soft bark trees, along with softer layers of wood underneath it, as well as deer and moose will eat bark if vegetation becomes scarce, and camels also eat bark of some trees because vegetation is always scarce in arid climates. And of course, termites are probably the most well-known wood-eating animal. And termites actually have bacteria in their gut that helps them break down the hardwood parts of most plants that other animals don't want to eat. So they kind of have this huge untapped source of cellulose.
I always like to remind everyone that deer also eat birds.
Deer eat birds and they'll eat human bones.
Yeah. Yeah, still not have gotten over that one where nothing is really a true herbivore because they'll take advantage of whatever minerals they can get.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they need it.
Yep.
I do think that's actually kind of metal, but
It is, but it has permanently twisted the way that I look at herbivores and like deer especially, which are this like kind of stupid dainty animal. I mean,
kind of
No,
stupid, dainty
you're
animal.
right. They're not kind of stupid. They're extremely stupid.
Oh, they're the dumbest animals. Absolutely.
But I would also say that, like, you can readily find videos on the interweb of deer just, like, finding baby birds or rabbits on the ground and going, ooh, hoo, hoo, thank you very much. I don't like it. I don't like it. Anyway.
Since you don't like that, we should move on to our first question this week, which doesn't have anything to do with deer eating baby animals.
Yet.
Yeah. Question 1 this week comes to us from Christy. What would a hospital that treats mythological creatures or cryptids look like?
Huh.
I feel like it would probably be a large rectangular prism, probably built out of bricks, with a lot of like windows in it. And yeah, that's what most buildings look like.
I mean, it's probably a building. Yeah, I'll give you that. I think the heart of the question boils down more to, would it be veterinary or would it be like what's the opposite of veterinary? What's veterinary for people?
What's veterinary for people?
Hospital?
A hospital?
Is that it? Like, is there a better word? I don't know.
A medical facility for...
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get right down to it, humans are also animals, so our doctors are functionally vets, right?
Well, vets have to be like a lot better trained because they deal with animals that can't talk to you and tell you what's wrong with them.
The other thing I was thinking about was that when it comes to a vet, I should be upfront. I've never owned a pet, so I've never been to the vet. Hey, that rhymes. But I assume that veterinary doctors are able to work on different kinds of animals. Like, there's not like the dog doctor at the vet and there's the cat doctor. Like, there's a person who works on both, right?
There are specialists, much like in, regular human people doctors. They're pretty much the vet that most people are going to think of. They'll do domesticated animals, but even they have to know how to take care of like reptiles and birds and some exotic animals.
So there's like a general practitioner that's good at all that at a base level. And then there are like specialists that if you have like...
there would be like farm veterinarians.
Like
and
lizard
zoo
gallstones.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I feel like there is a distinction between the more animal-like cryptids and the more human-like cryptids.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, what's the girl that comes out of the well?
The Ring?
From the Ring?
Yeah, the girl from the Ring, yeah. She's a
ghost,
Japanese...
Oh, like a yokai.
Yeah, like a yokai.
Okay.
Like, some yokai would probably go to a human hospital.
That's
but,
true.
Like, Mothman is basically an owl, so that feels like a vet.
That's really
hold
interesting.
on. I have a question because Mothman is a moth, isn't Mothman like supposed to be like an insectoid creature?
My point still stands.
Because like moths have weird organs. Well, I mean, they have some of the same organs, but like some of them are not. But if Mothman is more of a person-y creature or like an animal creature, I mean, moths are animals, but you know what I mean.
Mothman is always described as humanoid.
Yeah,
I think, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's closer to human just because it's like upright.
Okay, so Mothman could go to either, is what you're saying.
yeah.
All I'm saying is, centaurs we've discovered are not entirely like human. Like, their anatomy can't be. Neither can mermaids. We've talked about this.
Right.
Yeah. Actually, Aly, you, me, Jim, and Derek have all talked about this, both on and off the podcast.
Ad nauseum as well.
I think it's interesting that you would throw in like yokai with this because like we're kind of dipping into like folklore and mythology there.
Yeah.
And
What's the difference?
Difference from like cryptozoology, which is like not always like Mothman is, I guess, folklore to a certain extent, right? But like, and like Yetis to a certain extent, you get them, but like also cryptozoology as a pseudoscience kind of defines itself by like animals that people don't think exist anymore, except for this like one thing, right?
Yeah.
So then you kind of blurring the line between like I don't know, like cultural folklore and
Mm.
you know what I mean?
I think folklore is kind of an exploration of what we assume the history might be, whereas cryptozoology would be more, let's figure out what the animal is like.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's this weird line that is Nessie Scottish folklore? Arguably yes, but also
interesting.
Is that on the same vein as like yokai, which is thousands of years old, right?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because when I think about Nessie seems to me, and I know that this isn't strictly true, but like Nessie feels very modern. But then you go back in the same region and you have things like selkies and other aquatic creatures they fill the same niche, but they're much, much older.
Right.
I mean, especially Scotland being in the Celtic region, you've got, like, I would agree that Nessie is very modern compared to a lot of the folklore of Scotland.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well then let me throw a different one out there, right? The modern sort of more Americanized version of like Bigfoot versus Yetis, which are probably a lot older, much more from like the Nepal area, right? The Sherpa people, right? Kind of have some in like some of the more like the mountainous regions and stuff like that have actual folklore that dates back to probably over 1,000 years at this point. But then you also have these like very modern day, or like chupacabras, right? Or kind of modern day, but also kind of rooted in sort of older Mexican lore sometimes and things like that. Where do you draw the line?
Well, I think that's kind of an interesting distinction because this question specifically includes both mythological creatures and cryptids. And while I think cryptid is a term that I think we could apply more to something that would be medical, because it would be like, we're just looking at what the creature is. We're not looking at any sort of mythology behind it. But if you specifically look at mythological creatures, you open a door to something that you've all kind of touched on a little bit, that I wanted to mention, is that if you have mythological creatures, if you have some kind of magic involved, I'm thinking you're not only treating these animals, you might, like, one of the big things I wanted to bring up is I read a lot about gnomes. And gnomes are pretty famously like very medically inclined in like German folklore. And so I'm thinking if there's a hospital that's dealing with like treating centaurs and fairy creatures, I think they're going to hire some of these fairy creatures as well.
Oh, so we've got staff.
Yeah.
You would almost think that like because it's mythological creatures and crypto creatures, you'd have to have something on staff that could treat, that was like,
sure,
if you coexist with different species, like Star Trek does that, right? Like this alien race has a completely different anatomy. We need a doctor who knows that, right?
Yeah, a specialist in that.
Yeah, you would think that you'd have like unicorn specialists and like stuff like that as well.
Another thing that you were kind of getting at too about where do you draw the line between the folklore and what the cryptid is, I think about Mothman to a certain extent fits this, but like I always think of the Jersey Devil, because the Jersey Devil has been described as this like specific looking creature, but there's also like a few different stories about where it came from.
Yeah.
And so like it's kind of both.
Yeah.
That's the thing, like with some of the older things that sort of qualify as cryptids, it's weird to say that, but some of them have passed into, I guess what I would say is like local folklore or like local myth even.
Or some have been proven to be real.
True.
Like the platypus.
Or the okapi.
The okapi, yeah.
And now you can find them at Disney.
Yeah.
Oh.
But like I think like there is a difference between the things that we think of as like American cryptids and like folklore-y status of things. Like if we're talking about Fae, that opens up a completely different realm of opportunities for like healers and magic and like mischief. But if we're talking about like a big guy in the woods, that's something a little bit different.
It's interesting. I was just reading about this a couple days ago. A lot of the things that we talk about when we say cryptid, not all of them, but when we say the word cryptid, we're talking a lot about Appalachian folklore.
True.
Because a lot of the, like, even Nessie kind of fits the category. If you go into Europe and if you go into the Mediterranean, there's like more of a folkloric and almost a more mystical history of these fictional creatures, but everything that's in like northeastern America is like we were already past the age of reason by the time we colonized here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is interesting because like you have these like just very different sort of, you know, this cryptozoology umbrella, and then you have these very different things of like, yeah, the Bigfoot is kind of rooted in more like European mountainous or like Asiatic mountainous regions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have like the Loch Ness Monster, which could be rooted in some of that stuff. But then you have like Aly was saying, like, I don't know, are there any cryptids that are like fairies in America? Because then you're cutting into like old Celtic pagan like religious beliefs, which is
right
also like really interesting.
I feel like there are some strange overlaps with like fairy and fae folklore with things like Mothman. And actually, weirdly enough, and this isn't directly pertinent to the question, but alien abduction phenomenon is very like fairy folklore. Like you are taken
It's similar.
out of your world into another world where very bizarre things happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
You have lost all sort of control of your body. And then, you know, in an alien abduction scenario, you were deposited back with, you know, no evidence that any of this happened. But it is similar to stories where people sort of tumble into the fairy realm and then come back out with, you know, sort of worse for wear, I guess you would say. It's not a one-to-one comparison, but I always thought it was fascinating how much they sort of have that overlap.
It's interesting that you mention aliens, because that kind of makes me want to hesitantly bring it back to the question of what would hospitals look like in aliens abducting people. We usually tell stories about them doing kind of surgical procedures on people.
Yeah.
Oh,
so like, so that's a cryptid hospital scenario.
Yeah.
That's true.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. We probably all went straight to zoo hospitals, right? I don't know about you.
Yeah.
Like zoo hospitals.
I went straight to gnomes. That's where
Gnomes. That's fair. That's fair. Unsurprised, but still. Have any of you seen The Librarian? Like
No.
the movie? Oh, okay. There's this really fun series of movies. They turned it into a TV show recently and then canceled it. But there's this really old. It's not really old, I guess, but there's the older movies called The Librarian, right? It's a Noah Wyle movie where he gets a job at the library. Like, it's not just a library, it's the library. And they collect relics and, like, magical artifacts and stuff. And his job as the librarian is to run around and, like, collect magical artifacts and bring them back to the library for safekeeping. And
interesting.
It's very sort of, like, pulp action-y, like, kind of like Indiana Jones if he actually used his degrees instead of just shooting things. Which is why we like it. My wife and I love it. But the library itself is kind of what popped into my head, because the library is this. It's its own sort of magical entity that has like a presence, right? And every time you bring something back, the library helps you provide something that can house the artifact or house the magical, you know, whatever. And there's one part of it where they show you they're housing the Tree of Life. And they have, like, a section for Nessie, and they have a section for, like, a couple other, like, animals that don't exist and stuff. And that's almost what I thought about was, like, what if it was a building that had, like, almost compartmentalized spaces that were specific to a particular type of monster or folklore. Like we have aquatic monsters like Nessie, but also what's the Japanese yokai that has the head that you can't spill?
Oh, a kappa.
A kappa, yeah. So you have like an aquatic section where like you would deal with those types of animals, and then you have like, you know, a really cold section, almost like a Zootopia for like a Zootopia hospital. We have this snowy area where we put Yetis, and we have like
I love that.
Yeah.
That's very cute.
I think that would make a lot of sense. It'd have to be like a massive like underground Area 51. That's what Area 51 is. It's a crypto hospital. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I'm thinking of, there are some like TV shows, there are some other TV shows that came out kind of in the X-Files era, and I'm like blanking on the name of literally any single one of them. But like, that's kind of like a genre, I would say, is like this idea that there's paranormal researchers, and they, you know, regardless of what comes into this facility, there would have to be people either who are already experts on all these bizarre things, but also there'd have to be people who can research things, and there'd have to be people studying tomes upon tomes of like, this is, some reports say unicorns eat this, and some reports say that they are immune to these diseases or something.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds lovely. That sounds like a perfect job.
Yeah.
Warehouse 13 kind of did that, didn't it?
That's what I was thinking of, I think.
I was also thinking of like Men in Black a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like Men in Black would have a, like, well, if there was like an alien Men in Black hospital, I feel like they would have a much more difficult time because I don't know that I can really say this with any kind of confidence, but I feel like the mythological creatures on Earth are at least grounded in a shared anatomy that animals have, theoretically, whereas aliens would be just all over the board. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like I could go either way, depending on, because if we're in the alien fiction genre, we're talking about carbon-based life forms specifically.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're in mythology, we could just have beings made of pure light.
Yeah. Which I was thinking about that, actually. I was thinking about the number of like sorcerers and warlocks and witches and things of that ilk that they would have to employ for creatures that don't necessarily have a physical form or don't have like life-sustaining organs. I was specifically thinking of things like angels and demons. I wouldn't think they would have organs, right?
I want to know how far we can take this, if in the modern day we could have transfusion chambers set up where vampires could just be like always on blood bags or something.
Kind of like a dialysis for vampires.
Yeah. It's like, you don't need to feed on people anymore. You just kind of always need, which, I don't know, would they hate that? Maybe they would hate that.
What kind of medical attention would a ghost require?
And that was a point I wanted to ask, is like, we're talking about hospitals, which typically are to prevent things from dying. And if we define ghost as a thing that's already dead, do we treat ghosts?
So I would argue yes, because you don't treat ghosts physically. You treat ghosts mentally. It's therapy.
Oh, therapy.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense, actually, because usually ghosts are here because they have some kind of like trauma or attachment or something they need to let go of.
Stuck in a doll's body.
Yeah.
You literally... oh my gosh, that's amazing. You just have this section of the hospital where like, what do you do? Oh, I'm a therapist for dolls. For possessed dolls.
So typically in a hospital, you have therapeutic, and then you have medical, and then you have surgical. We'd have to have so many different branches to this hospital in addition to those.
Yeah.
This is a nightmare.
I feel like I've made this joke at least 3 times on this podcast, but I am going to make it again because it's never been more relevant than this moment.
Okay.
And it's that we need to hire a centaur for disease control.
Yes.
The Centaur for disease control. Yes.
Yeah.
You're right. This is the most relevant time we've ever made that joke, Alex.
So before we move on to question 2, I have a sort of a riddle for all of you. which there's a scientific point to this, which I will explain afterward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a series of 3 numbers. And there is a rule to the pattern that these numbers are following. And you're going to have to figure out what that rule is. And the way you're going to have to do that, it's not going to be that bad, Allie. I'm sorry.
It's not math?
It's not math.
Okay.
Well, I was about to say, Allie and I are social scientists, Derek. This is pushing our limits.
It's the most basicest of math you can possibly math.
I literally just grabbed a piece of paper, so...
I did too.
I'm just going to ride y'all's coattails.
This is an experiment that theoretically could go on for a while, but I'm going to have you all get to make 3 guesses, and then I'll explain after that so that it doesn't go on forever. The way you have to answer this riddle is I'm going to give you a series of 3 numbers, and you may, one at a time, give me another series of 3 numbers that you think fits the rule, and I'll tell you whether or not it does.
Okay.
After that, you have 1 guess. Each time you give me a set of numbers, you have 1 guess as to what the rule is, and I'll simply give you a yes or a no. And if anybody gets it, then we'll end early.
Okay.
So the random order I've picked is we'll go through each of you 3 times, and we'll start with Jim. And we'll go Jim, Aly, Justin. So I'll give you 3 numbers. 2, 4, 8.
Let's see. Hold on. I got to do math now. 32, 64, 128.
That does fit my rule.
Excellent.
Do you have a guess as to what the rule might be?
Is it powers of 2?
It is not.
Oh, no.
Aly, your turn.
Let's do 12, 24, 48.
That does fit my rule.
Oh.
Do you have a guess as to what the rule might be?
It has to have 2, 4, and 8 in the final letter. Yep, that's how good I am at numbers.
Interesting. That is not my rule.
Okay.
Justin, you're up.
All right. Let's do 32, 64, 128.
That does fit my rule.
Okay.
It's also the numbers Jim gave.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. All right, how about 20, 40, and 80?
20, 40, 80? Yes, that does also fit my rule.
Okay. I'm thinking it's every time you have a number, you add the same number together to get the answer, and then you put that as the next number. So like 2 plus 2 equals 4, 4 plus 4 equals 8. So it'd be like 16 plus 16 equals 32, 32 plus 32 equals 64. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I know what you mean, and that is not my rule.
Ooh.
Jim, do you have another set of numbers to give me?
How about 5, 10, 20?
5, 10, 20 fits the rule.
Is it just double the one before it?
No?
Because that's basically what Justin said, so of course it's not that. I don't know why I said that.
Yeah.
Pick somebody else.
All right, well, that brings it back to Aly.
My numbers are 40, 23, 190.
That
Ooh.
does not fit my rule.
Okay. We've got to know, gentlemen. You're welcome.
I'm still just like caught in my own head about how I was so focused on doing this that I didn't realize I gave you the exact same numbers that Jim did.
It happens. It's fine.
All right. So the doubling thing was like the big one that I had. And then, I realized after the fact that what I was doing and then what I was doing before are essentially the same thing. Like I had the exact same realization Jim had like after I did it.
Yeah.
10, 12, and 14.
That does fit the rule.
Is it that you take an odd number and you add 1 to it in succession?
That is not the rule. All right,
I think
Jim.
I have it.
So you said 10, 12, 14?
10, 12, and 14 were the ones I said, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Correct.
yes.
I'm going to say 1, 100, and 2 million.
That fits my rule.
Is it that the numbers have to get bigger each time?
Yep.
Yes, I got it too.
The rule is they're just a sequence of ascending numbers. So here's why I
Great
wanted
job.
to do this. Yeah, that was awesome. The reason I wanted to do this on this podcast is I first discovered this in an exploration of how the scientific method should use the null hypothesis. And what most people do, which is what you all started doing, is when you heard my original numbers, you formulated what you think probably was your guess. And then it took a while before you started suggesting things purposefully that went against that.
Yes.
And so I just thought that was fascinating because I watched like a good hour-long video of people trying to figure that out.
That's so cool.
Oh, that's so interesting.
I wanted to share it with you.
Well, like, it ties directly into what we were just talking about, too, right? Like, this idea that, it's almost like Occam's razor, right? The most simplest.
Oh, yeah.
Or that, like, the simplest explanation is often the most viable. And it deals directly with cryptozoology, right? Like, all these people are looking at things and being like, oh, it can't just be a guy in a suit, or it couldn't have just been something that I saw wrong. Like, I couldn't have seen that wrong.
Right.
It has to be a Bigfoot. It has to be a chupacabra. Like, something's eating our chickens. It's got to be a monster. It can't be a coyote, right?
I mean, are you all familiar with the story of like all swans are white?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Because when people would see swans, a lot of swans, I think it was like specifically it was in different countries. I don't remember. But because you've never seen a black swan, it seems like the rule all swans are white is accurate until finally all it takes is one black swan to prove that rule wrong.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's so interesting because after the first, did I get through 2, I think?
You got through, yeah, because Jim got it in the last one.
Yeah. So my second guess was intentionally to go
Yeah.
against what I thought could be a correct answer.
That's why I thought that was so fascinating that you did that, because nobody does that. I mean, some people I'm sure do it and they just didn't show it in the video, but like it usually takes people a while to kind of get to that. Oh, I'm going to start suggesting things that don't fit my rule because they might. And then Jim, yours, what, 100 and then 2 million?
Yeah.
Like that didn't fit your previous rule, but it did fit mine. So I love that experiment.
So people will keep trying to fit it into the same rule? Is that what you're asking?
The thing that I saw happening most is people for some reason get to the powers of 2.
Okay.
And then they'll just start doing math and figuring, okay, well, what if I just keep suggesting later and later powers of 2? And then, but yes, it does fit the rule because it's still ascending, but it's not actually giving them more information.
Interesting. I did that on paper. And then I had the realization that Jim had of like, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just doing it in a different way. So then I started adding 1 to just odd numbers because I thought it sounded stupid and I thought maybe there'd be a stupid answer.
And it's interesting. The first time I heard this, it was done to me and I went through a very similar process, which was kind of interesting to hear the 3 of you kind of working through it because I saw the steps being put together. So thank you for indulging me.
Yeah, that was neat.
Yeah, it was cool.
Go try that on your friends, everyone.
Yeah. Or, try it on your friends and then tell them to listen to where you heard it.
Yeah. I'm gonna go do that to a bunch of high school students this week.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah. Just got to figure out how to tie it into my curriculum now.
Ooh, the scientific method, I think, is
the way. Yeah, I like that.
So, why don't we move on to question 2 this week?
All right.
Question 2 this week. Are birds actually dinosaurs?
Oh, this is my activation phrase.
Let's go in a round. Jim?
Okay. So how are we doing this? What round would you like to go in, Justin?
Oh, I just think we should go and quickly answer what we think the answer is.
Oh, okay.
So, Jim?
I'm going to say yes with asterisk.
Yes with asterisk. Interesting.
Derek?
I like Jim's answer. I could elaborate, but yes with asterisk.
Okay. Aly?
Yes.
Yes. I am also a definitive yes. So
Okay.
Interesting. All right, let's go. Aly, tear it apart.
Okay. So I feel like first we have to take a big step backwards and say, what is a dinosaur?
That's my first question.
Before we can say if a bird is a dinosaur, we have to ask, what is a dinosaur?
Because we know a bird is a bird.
A bird is a bird, and a bird is also a reptile.
What?
Which we'll get to.
Now you might have... Okay, I'm sticking with you.
Okay, so dinosaurs are a type of reptile that have a unique hip, and that hip has a hole in it which allows for specific rotation of their legs, whether they are bird-hipped or lizard-hipped. Those are the two kinds of dinosaurs.
So those are both dinosaurs.
Correct. The other rule about dinosaurs is that they live on land, so they cannot be sea-dwelling and they cannot be flying.
Oh, okay.
However, at a point, this deviates, which we'll talk about.
Okay.
So, questions, comments, concerns so far?
No, this is great.
You've started exactly where I wanted you to start, so yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. So the bird-hipped dinosaurs, things like Stegosaurus, Triceratops, the Hadrosaurs, Parasaurolophus, Pachycephalosaurus, all of those friends have a basically a reduced pubis bone that points backwards. And their hip is a unique shape. It has kind of like a, I don't even want it, almost like a zigzag or like a cursive Z.
Okay.
Shape to it.
I'm sure we can get some visual aids in the show notes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I am flabbergasted at all of the animals that all the dinosaurs you just named.
that I just rattled off.
Not because you did it, because I know you, but because birds are descended from theropods, which are mostly meat eaters. They're mostly carnivores, and you just named all herbivores.
Correct.
Well, because those are the lizard hips.
Nope, those are bird-hipped.
Those are bird-hipped. Okay.
Correct.
Yep. Okay. Sorry. Now you've confused me, Jim, and Derek. So go on.
I thought I wasn't confused, but now okay, go on.
So the bird-hipped ones are Stegosaurus, Triceratops, Hadrosaurs, etc. The lizard-hipped are Saurischians, which have a long, distended pubis bone that points down. So if you've ever seen a T-Rex skeleton, you can see it right away.
This is going in the opposite direction I thought it was going to go.
Interesting. So lizard-hipped are things like sauropods and theropods, T-Rexes, Spinosaurus, Diplodocus, raptors, stuff like that. And the lizard-hipped ones, are the ones that eventually divert into birds, aves.
Okay.
So, from there, I would ask you guys, what is a bird?
What is a bird? A bird is it has feathers and a beak and
the other thing about birds is that they do not give birth to live young. They lay eggs of some sort. I think that is true of all birds, right?
Correct.
Good.
So birds have feathers, lay eggs, have beak. And they are terrible, but they are also not a lizard, right? So where the divergence happens is with the Archaeopteryx.
My favorite.
That is the one that I do know. That's what always comes into mind when you think about birds and dinosaurs. Yeah.
So, do you all also know of the Microraptor?
I'm familiar.
Do.
It sounds familiar, but I don't know if I could tell you about it.
Let's assume we're not familiar with it, because you probably have notes.
Sure, yeah.
And also our listeners may not be familiar, so.
Of course. So a Microraptor is a type of theropod raptor, which was very, very small, and was also noted to have feathers, and lots of them. Microraptors were covered in feathers, much like the Archaeopteryx. But the Archaeopteryx gets the kind of pin as the first bird. And there is a reason for that. Even though the Archaeopteryx is found in the Jurassic, I believe, the Archaeopteryx is known to be the first bird because of a special muscle. And that muscle is present in all birds.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Whereas a microraptor lacks this tendon for this supracoracotus muscle. And that tendon connection does not exist in the microraptor, which means it could only lift its shoulder to about parallel with the ground. So it could glide, but it could not propel itself in flight. It had no potential for powered flight. The Archaeopteryx has this muscle, which means it could flap its wings and get powered and sustained flight.
Okay.
So, the birds we see today have hollow bones, have this supracoracotus muscle and the tendon that connects it, and they are directly descended from Archaeopteryx or theropods. So we see all of these connective things from that lizard-hipped, of all things, dinosaurs, present in modern-day birds. It's just gone through 65 million years of changes.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, or did I just ramble for 15 minutes?
No, and that's exactly what I had read myself, but I knew you'd do it a lot better than I would because you actually know like animals and things like that. But my understanding is that the theropods are just birds now. They were dinosaurs and now they're birds, which birds are dinosaurs.
Correct.
The reason that I put an asterisk next to my yes is because I always like to make it clear that not all dinosaurs didn't just become birds. Like, birds are a remnant of dinosaurs. They are specifically the theropods that survived.
Okay.
So, there are no brontosauruses that became birds or things like that. It is
Correct.
This is a very small group of dinosaurs that managed to get past that extinction boundary, and that's it. So, that's why I always like to clarify that, because people ask that, like, oh, we're Brontosaurus and Diplodocus, and it's like, no, those are
they didn't all evolve into birds. Just
exactly.
Okay.
Correct.
Those are our favorites, and they're dead.
It's how evolution works, right? Like, everybody always is just like, evolution is one big happy thing, and you're like, no, it's very central, like localized things that are happening, constantly.
Mass extinctions are a great example of this too, because a mass extinction does not care about, who's fittest.
Yeah.
It's like pretty indiscriminate.
Survival of the lucky.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
And it also helps that every mass extinction is different. So, like, I mean, if they were close together, which they generally aren't, but a creature that would be good at surviving, like the end Permian mass extinction, which was all about volcanism and ocean acidification, wouldn't be maybe necessarily good at being hit by an asteroid.
I did have one more thing I wanted to mention, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is the intrinsic human element of distinguishment, right?
Okay.
Kind of in the same vein of what Jim was saying, where it's like birds are what theropods managed to survive that extinction event. But, nature is not dictating what is and is not a dinosaur. We are doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We have put these buckets under things to help understand them, right? We use those to help us learn about our world and to understand it more. But nature doesn't care that, a bird is a dinosaur. Birds don't care that a mammal is a mammal. Nature doesn't have these buckets. They are a very human thing to think about, which I think is important.
Yeah.
But I also want to call that, that attention to the process of discovery of dinosaurs has led us to create these buckets, and the way that these buckets were created through time to understand this process. So it's flawed and has its own kind of back and forth with
That's
that.
why we're on this podcast, though, right? is to sit here and argue the minutia ad nauseum.
Right.
That's fair to say about almost anything, right? Like, that's the whole process of trying to put things into categories and define them, and then use those definitions to make sure that all of our to see where things are linked together as part of the scientific process.
Yes.
Yeah.
It also doesn't help that, like, paleontology, when it first became a thing, was a bunch of old white guys trying to one up each other. So a lot of our definitions are flawed because old rich white guys were like, well, but look, that looks kind of different. Name that something different so that I can get money for it.
Put my name on that.
Yeah.
Well, the reason that last point, I liked your last point, but the very last thing of it being, we've decided on these categories, which the important point I want to make sure is conveyed there. This reminds me very much of, is Pluto a planet? Because yes, the distinction between planet and dwarf planet is somewhat arbitrary in that they're just big masses of rock, but we've come up with rules that over the years we've discovered Pluto didn't fit into.
Yeah.
And that's the same with the figuring out, dinosaur means this thing. Turns out birds also are this thing, right?
Yeah.
As long as I'm understanding that correctly.
100%.
So that's kind of why I had the asterisk, which is I used to be totally, because I can see the similarity between T-Rex and a chicken.
Oh, yeah.
So I've always been kind of like, I buy that they're descended from dinosaurs, but I was like, but they're not like really dinosaurs. They're descended from dinosaurs. And it took me a while to realize, it fits these criteria, which is what we have as the definition of dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my asterisk explanation.
I think if you look at a cassowary, you're like, oh, yeah.
Oh. A cassowary will come for your life. It will make you a hashtag.
But T-Rexes are just basically giant chickens.
Yeah. Or giant geese. I don't know.
Now I've derailed the whole thing by oversimplifying.
No,
T-Rexes.
I'm like deep in thought over here, which is the pause where I'm looking at a picture of a goose in flight and going, yeah, that's a raptor.
So here's the hard thing for me to kind of get around, because a lot of birds fly. It's one of the things we associate with birds, even though it's not a thing that defines them as birds. And a pterodactyl is not a dinosaur.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's really like kind of weird for me.
It's those hips. Hips don't lie.
It's also not a bird though, right?
Correct.
It's also not a bird.
Very true.
It's a reptile.
So like the avian reptiles evolved into birds, whereas the flying reptiles they didn't get to turn into a thing.
Correct.
Which is a little sad.
Yeah, that's what happens when a big meteor hits the planet.
Yeah. When you get turned into dino dust, it's hard to pass your genes on to the next generation.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, we have a third question this week, and it's kind of on the theme of dinosaurs. This question comes to us from Brian. What is the largest dinosaur that a full-grown grizzly bear could beat in a fight?
Probably none of the ones you would think of.
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not wrong.
I was not surprised when I looked at like, what are the sizes of dinosaurs and whatnot, and it was like, Triceratops is between 8 and whatever tons, and it's like, okay, yeah, so far so good. And then you look at a grizzly bear that's like around like 1,500 pounds, so not even quite a ton. Like that's an average.
Yeah.
But it's humbling, and this is something that it's hard to envision unless you have a tape measure and or if you go to a museum. But like dinosaurs, the ones that you are familiar with, dinosaurs are huge, and like a Triceratops and a Stegosaurus, they are going to beat that grizzly bear every time, I would think.
They're not even the biggest bear.
No, they're like the smallest of the like famous ones almost.
I was just going to say, I think even if we change the question to allow polar bears instead, I think we have a similar answer.
I think polar bears kill more people than grizzly bears.
Polar bears are tenacious, and they'll
Yeah.
kind of follow you, whereas mostly grizzly bears, when they say grizzly bears don't want to interact with people, that's mostly true, but like polar bears are far more aggressive from what I've read.
So I know like from when I was in high school, I went hiking in New Mexico, and that was like that was the big thing that they'd tell you out in New Mexico was like brown bears are nothing, right? Brown bears are scared of everything. They're not going to follow you. They're going to run away. We saw a couple brown bears like pretty close up actually, and they just kind of ran away. Like brown bears don't like people. Grizzly bears are really territorial, from what I understand. And so like they don't follow people around. They don't like to interact with people. But if you go in their area, then they get really aggressive. Is at least from what I remember.
Especially if you're around where they would have young. Yeah. Right.
And like the thing is, while grizzly bears aren't as big as some other bears, they're more aggressive in certain circumstances. I don't know how they pair up against polar bears. I can tell you from this website called Yellowstone Bear World. If this is true, this is pretty impressive too, right? A bite force of 1,000 psi, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And run up to 100 yards in 8 seconds. So like they can outrun dogs and stuff, which means they're pretty fast, right? They don't climb trees, but they're really fast and they're really strong bites, and they have longer claws. Their claws are longer than polar bears too, so they're a little bit more dangerous because like with their hands, I guess is what you call them, their paws. But they're like definitely one of the more dangerous bear. I don't know about polar bears, but they're definitely one of the more dangerous bear. Especially considering they're not the biggest, but like they're definitely more dangerous than some like black bears. Kodiak bears, I don't think are that aggressive comparatively.
I'm generally under the impression that if there is a bear, you shouldn't fight it.
Or if you do, you better be sure who's going to win.
You better be sure who's going to win. So I just reread the question. So this is not something I really prepared any research on, but it just kind of threw the question upside down in my head. So maybe you're all ahead of me or maybe not. But the question reads specifically, what is the largest dinosaur that a full-grown grizzly bear could beat? It does not say anything about being a full-grown dinosaur.
Oh.
Okay.
So like baby T-Rex versus full-grown grizzly bear, maybe?
I mean, I think the bear wins with the baby T-Rex.
Yeah.
Baby T-Rexes are really small and really fragile.
Yeah. I feel like baby anything would probably be pretty small and fragile compared to a bear.
I do have a specific dinosaur in mind.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Iguanodon.
Ooh.
Iguanodon.
Oh. They got those spikes, though.
They do, but they're like, that's the biggest animal I could, like, that's like almost a fair fight. Right?
Yeah.
They're not they're not carnivores. They don't like but like I feel like a bear could keep up with it if it tried to run away.
Okay.
I feel like cuz like bears have those big old claws, right? That can kind of like it almost like cats, you know, cats can, I don't know if you know this about cats. Large like big cats' claws, the way that they're retractable, They come out whenever they attach to prey, and then they literally cannot retract when they're inside of something unless they get torn out of the thing they're inside of. I do not think that bears are the same, but their claws are like in a similar, like, they're long and they're sharp.
Yeah.
And while they're not as hooked as a cat, so they don't get stuck in something, I feel like tearing potential is still pretty high on a bear's claws. And from what I can tell, grizzlies have some of the bigger ones. So I think that, especially with some of the herbivores, I would not have picked a carnivore for this because I think carnivores would.
I think a bear could take a Microraptor.
Well,
I was
yeah.
gonna say
yeah.
one of the combies, like the little things at the beginning of Jurassic Park 2.
Yeah. larger carnivores, I don't think it stands a chance. Larger herbivores, I think that, like, you know, some of the sauropods are too big. But
yeah.
But like an iguanodon is like just about the right height. It's a little bit bigger than a bear, but I think the bear is aggressive enough that it could probably take it down.
Yeah. According to this cursory Google search I just did, iguanodons averaged about 8.9 feet as an adult. So, like the same size as a grizzly bear. Like it's a little taller, but
they're longer,
taller, but less girth.
I've seen that grizzly bears can fight like grizzly bears that are almost twice as big and win. So grizzly bears are scrappy.
Well, that's kind of why I wanted to say I tried to find a list of dinosaurs that are roughly the size I'm looking for. Couldn't find a good one, so I'm just going to make one up. But like, let's say something that is like a herbivore that is like twice the size of a grizzly bear or something like that. I was thinking about how, humans could take down a woolly mammoth, or hominids could take down a woolly mammoth because they hunt in packs.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, grizzly bears aren't going to like have the organization to do that. But like, if something was that size, but it wasn't like claws and teeth, a grizzly bear might be able to do more damage to it. But then I was kind of looking at grizzly bears aren't big game hunters.
No.
They eat things that are littler than them.
Yeah. I would argue that they're not trying to eat this animal.
True.
They're just trying to destroy it.
Yeah.
So it comes into their territory and they're defending their cubs from it, is kind of a scenario that might make sense.
I guess that would be the only thing that makes sense. Yeah.
It's so hard to find information about like medium-sized dinosaurs.
Because there really weren't any.
Yeah.
There really aren't any. Yeah.
Like
really
I found
are.
a lot of small dinosaurs. I found a lot of things that were like 2 feet tall, things like that. And then it jumped straight to like 15 feet. And I'm like, what about, there's got to be some.
It's like raptors are about the mid-size, right? So they get from like the 6 feet to 8 feet, 8 feet to 12 feet. That's your raptor range because they hunt in packs. They're clever. They're going to be able to outmaneuver and outmanipulate larger herbivores.
Right. But what about like grizzly v raptor 1v1? Like
raptor wins.
You think? I mean,
100%.
I thought so too, because I'm thinking of its bite strength. I'm thinking of, its speed. A grizzly bear is going to get outmaneuvered, I think.
Yeah.
So do you think a Parasaurolophus is larger? They're about the same size as an iguanodon, aren't they?
I think they're both. Are they both hadrosaurs?
I think
Is an
Parasaurolophuses
iguanodon?
are like 15 feet tall. I'll punch it into Google.
They might be 15 feet long.
Ah, fair. This says height 16 feet, but I don't know if that's like... Although they stood upright, so that could be...
Yes, they did.
That could be right.
I think that's a useful measurement.
Yeah, they're between 6 and 8 tons, so they're on the bigger side.
Yeah. I will also say that in general, dinosaurs have the upper hand with, like, armor, right? They are scaled and going to be tougher to get through. Even if the grizzly has those long claws, it's going to take more slashing damage to really impair a dinosaur of any substantial size.
Yeah.
So even the iguanodon is going to have that thick, scaly hide, and that's going to be a problem. The grizzly bear gets hit once good, and it's KO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I was thinking about like Triceratops, and it's much, much bigger, but I was thinking, what if the bear could get behind the Triceratops? But in a lot of ways, it's kind of like saying, well, who would win in a fight, a bear or an elephant? And I would put my money on the elephant because it's just mass, just a bunch of it.
I'll tell you what that reminds me of is where I started with this question, because like right off the bat, and I preface this by saying this is before looking at any size comparisons. I started by thinking, I imagine a lot of people are going to assume dinosaur beats bear. So I wanted to be the contrarian and find examples of the opposite. So I'm sticking with T-Rex because that's the one that I just think that's the first one everyone points out most of the time. So I said, well, maybe a bear could beat a T-Rex if it like got behind it and could get on its back. And then 2 problems with that. One, I looked at a picture of them standing next to each other. So I could stop there. But then 2 is that for this entire question, I have to throw tactics out the window because a bear isn't going to try to, maneuver around something. It's going to either brute force it or it's going to run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have an answer.
Okay.
That I would like to... I think that this is the largest that, in my opinion, a bear could take.
Okay.
And that's a Gallimimus.
Ooh.
I gotta look this up.
Tell me more about this.
They're speedy. They're the kind of long-necked. They look like an ostrich, kind of. And, like, they're just spindly enough that I think that if a bear got a hold of its neck, that's it. Like, that's it. They're faster, but if we're talking 1v1, I think the bear wins.
Okay.
I definitely think it could outrun a bear by looking at it.
What's the land speed of a bear? Not that a bear has any other speed other than land.
I mean, they're fast, but I'm just looking at how this thing looks like it is built to be a running animal.
It is. It is.
Bears are faster than we think of them. I know that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's got that neck. That's a weak point.
Spindle legs. Like,
yeah.
And it's big.
And it's big, so that fits the criteria.
As we're talking about this, it makes me think that the grizzly bear was a bad choice, right? I actually, like, as I'm thinking more about it, I think a better animal to talk about would be like a large cat, like a Bengal tiger.
Ooh. Right. Okay, I can see that.
Because they're predators that specifically go out, but like they're also, I think their smaller size actually would be an advantage talking about some of these things, because like that, like bears are just big enough that they're easy targets.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you put the raptor against the bear, like the first thing I pictured was its, the claws on its feet getting underneath that bear's arms, and then very graphic images. And that's like what cats do to things.
Cat claws, like big cat claws, most of them, not all of them, but a lot of them do. Like tigers, lions for sure, like big hunting tigers that use their weight to hunt for things. Have these retractable claws that they come out and they dig into whatever they're on, and then they basically lock in place. So they literally cannot come out of whatever they're in until they tear out of the thing that they're in, right? And then they can retract back. But if there's any pressure on them, they lock up. So you see this in like lions and tigers a lot, because lions and tigers use their weight to take down larger predators. Or larger prey, rather, not predators, prey. So like they'll jump on top of things like a larger animal. Like lions will jump on top of like buffalo, or even sometimes elephants and stuff. And they'll use their weight to pull themselves out of the animal. So they'll jump on, they'll get their claws in, and then they'll lean back and try to like use how heavy they are to tear their claws out, and then they'll do it again. And that's how they take down larger animals, is they just kind of shred them by using their heavier cat weight. And I know that like lions take down elephants, and I know that some tigers are more solitary, but I know that they've done it too. So I wonder if you're comparing sort of elephant skin to dinosaur skin, if that would be a better animal to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. They also have that like ambush tact. Like they know that if they get up high and wait, they can get something bigger than them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, because bears, we do think of bears as like one of the big scary animals, but big cats and even like a pack of wolves might do better. I hesitate to say one wolf.
Yeah. I was interested in the idea of like a rhinoceros versus a triceratops. But
Ooh.
Rhinoceroses even are quite small compared to a triceratops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't get over just how big dinosaurs are.
Can I escalate one more?
Please.
Sure.
A hippo.
Oh.
Hippos are terrifying.
Yeah,
Yes,
hippo
they are.
might be able to do it, honestly.
Hippos are my son's favorite animal.
I feel like a hippo could decapitate a dinosaur.
A hippo could just bite its head and then hold it underwater, and then the dinosaur's dead from suffocation.
Yeah.
But they also have that thing we were talking about, like a tougher hide.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Especially that one with the neck, the Gallophanacus. I don't remember what it was actually.
Gallimimus.
the Gallophanacus.
the Gallophanacus. A hippo just sit on that thing, and it would break its neck.
So, a quick Google search. Hippos have the strongest bite of land animals, which I feel like that's a thing that I knew. 1,820 pounds per square inch.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
They're contenders, you know.
I bet you. I don't know. I was about to say something that may be a hot take, but now I'm sort of thinking maybe not.
Maybe it's not a hot take, or maybe
No,
you don't
maybe
wanna
it's
say
a stupid thing.
A lot of hot takes are stupid things, Jim.
Fair. I'm starting to think maybe like an elephant could take, or maybe even a hippo or a rhino could take on like an ankylosaurus. I know they're very thick and very armored, but like
Yeah.
A hippo.
but they're small. So like an ankylosaurus is like not that big relative to like a triceratops. So something big like a hippo or a rhino or an elephant could squash it.
I just want to say that some hippos can take on other hippos. So that's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what would you say an ankylosaurus's like armor is relative to something that we can measure?
Oh, that's a good question.
So, like a tortoise shell? Would that be?
I wonder. But of course it's big. How big is an ankylosaurus? So it lists the height as 5'6". So
Gosh.
I assume that would be how tall it is off the ground,
Probably.
which means it's actually quite large.
Yeah.
Oh, 11 tons. No, not 11 tons. That would be 6 tons. 11,000 pounds. That's still big. Like, I don't know. These dinosaurs are big.
A tortoise shell is tougher than aluminum, which is impressive. They say okay. I think that probably a hippo could not bite through an ankylosaurus armor because a turtle shell it takes about 1,500 psi to crack a turtle shell. And tortoise shells are stronger than turtle shells. They're thicker and made of stronger composite material.
Mhm.
And hippos only have about 1,800 psi in their bite strength, which means it would take multiple hippos biting in the same area to probably actually do any damage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just thinking maybe like squashing it.
Someday we'll just have to test this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll bring ankylosauruses back to life and squash them.
Yeah.
No.
I don't want to do that. Well,
No.
I don't want to do them if we bring them back to life.
They're cute.
Yeah. I don't think we should squash dinosaurs.
Well, listeners, let us know what's the biggest dinosaur a full-grown you could beat in a fight.
Mhm.
Jim, do we have any listener mail this week?
We do. And as always, if you want to send us listener mail, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com. You can comment on our blog. You can like us on Facebook. You can tweet at vaguelysci. Our email this week comes to us from Forrester and is in regards to episode 91, Uncivilized Dolphins. And Forrester writes, I have a few of those alien stickers from the episode picture. Where did you get those? If you just listen to the podcast on like, a service of some sort, you may not know on our blog, I always bring up like a picture that sort of fits the theme of the episode. And in this picture, there is a picture of a gray alien with a bunch of dolphins jumping around it. Though that is a sticker, as you have correctly guessed. Those stickers were from the 90s, and I got them in a Kmart vending machine.
Are they like the Lisa Frank looking stickers?
It looks very Lisa Frank. It was from a series called Visitors.
Okay.
And they were all like alien themed. But they do have that very 90s like vaporwave, Echo the Dolphin feel to them.
I remember those vending machines.
Yeah. I remember that me and the neighbor, we set up a lemonade stand specifically to get a bunch of quarters so that we could go to the vending machine and buy all the alien stickers, which is why I have so many of them. I have like most of the series, if not all of it.
All right.
I'm like 90% sure if you go to a Kmart today, you could probably still find those vending machines.
I don't think there are Kmarts today.
Is Kmart gone?
I think there's like 3 Kmarts.
I know a bunch of them shut down, but I don't think they still have a website.
I think most of them shut down. Like I saw something that was like the last Kmart, or like there's only a couple left.
There's like under 5 Kmarts in the country still, and I think they're all like, locally owned or whatever. But yeah, the Kmart and Sears gone. They did bad stuff.
They did bad at remaining
They
open.
did capitalism wrong, and now they're gone.
Now they're gone.
Well, thank you very much for that email. And if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and all the other great places that podcasts like to hang out. Subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
Yeah, and you can try out our basic math experiment on your friends.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Our vaguely musical intro is composed by Anthony Pizzelli, and don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. This is the end of our 4th year, so there's 4 years of stuff you gotta buy.
You have to buy it.
That's how it works, right?
I can't believe it's been 4 years. That's wild.
Yeah.
That is a lot of years.
It does not feel like it to me, which is weird because I do this every other week.
Yeah. I think that looking at the number and being like, oh, it's episode 104, that's the weird part to me. Not that
I agree.
The time isn't as much of a weird thing to me as the quantity of episodes we've recorded at this point.
Well, thank you to Aly and Justin for being here along for the ride.
Hey, thanks for having us. This was such a blast.
Aly,
Yeah. What's up?
do you smell that? I think it's a Bigfoot.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
We gotta go.
We gotta
okay,
go. We gotta go.
Okay.
We gotta go. Thanks, guys.
Well, for Vaguely Scientific, I'm Derek.
I'm Jim.
I'm Aly.
I'm leaving.
They're gone. Hey, what's that huge winged, vaguely humanoid figure with the glowing red eyes over there?
Toodaloo, everyone.
Hey, I'm gonna give this to you, Jim, before you wrap up. Forbes says that there are 9 Kmarts left in America.
Wow.
I could have sworn it was like 3. Interesting.
Oh, not all of them are in America. One of them is in Miami, Florida.
Okay.
One of them is
That's not in America.
No,
Sorry,
it
go ahead.
may as well not be, right? One of them's in Guam.
Okay.
Huh.
One of them is in Westwood, New Jersey. One of them's in Bridgehampton, New York. One's in Hato Puerto Rico.
Huh.
And then 4 of them are in the Virgin Islands, 2 of them in St. Croix, and 2 of them in St. Thomas.
So there are a lot of Kmarts in like outlying U.S. territories,
Yeah.
which is odd. That's a very strange situation to have occurred.
The Virgin Islands have 4 of them, which is insane.
4
to
out of
me.
9 is a big amount.
4 out of 9.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Huh.
It's over 40%.
It boils down to who owns them, I'm sure. Like,
Yeah.
Interesting.
Weird.